It's a 3D one is an icosahedron.
Icosahedron?
Yeah, so I guess hedrons are the three-dimensional shapes, and agons are two-dimensional.
Mhm.
The Tetrachus hexahedron is the
That's
name of the polyhedron 24-sided die in Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, you should dodecaheed my warnings. I think it's time we dive into the news, gentlemen.
yes, or else
Yeah.
icosa be gone.
It's getting very hard to tetratrack this. You're so stupid.
What happens when three high school friends reunite during a Trump apocalypse? I'll tell you what happens. They do a podcast, little buddy.
The Where's FEMA episode.
You are watching Generation Exile.
when when last week we checked in, we were talking about that big beautiful bill. It passed with what seemed like the momentum of a perfect bowel movement. No major hangups. And Trump not only got his big beautiful bill, he got it by his first deadline, which was the July 4th holiday. And so, there was some ceremony and whatnot, but this is now law. And people, very often in life, as in legislation, you find out what's going on after the fact. And I
Right.
think people are really going to start to notice the cuts to Medicaid, and I think they're going to feel that in all different places. And I hope they remember who's responsible.
I heard that's a lot of stuff like that, like Medicaid cuts and SNAP cuts that'll start really affecting people. Don't kick in, and I don't know if this is whatever, if this is rumor, but that they don't kick in till like next year, so the effects are not felt till after the midterm, at which point people can go, "Hey, the Democrats fucked us."
True. Or if we win back the House, maybe there's something that could be done to stop the bill after the Democrats take control. I don't know.
Right, right.
Dare I dream?
Well, the Republican-led Congress and Senate do not seem to be doing much to stand in the way of Trump, and seem very happy to enable him getting everything he wants. Some of which strikes me as pretty dangerous. Speaking of dangerous, I think one of the biggest stories, if not the big story this week, was this massive flash flood that tragically came to Texas. It was in Hunt, Texas, in Kerr County. They do have a lot of hills and a river, and they do get flash floods there. But this tragedy where, heartbreakingly, many children died. There was a summer camp there, which really got overrun in the wee hours of the morning, around 3 a.m. Shit started hitting the fan. And it seems this current event has become very much a Rorschach test for, your political alignment. Trump says, hey, look, it was a natural disaster. What can you do about it? It's tragic. Let's not politicize it. And some, like the New York Times, at least heads off with, as floods hit, key roles were vacant at Weather Service offices in Texas. And so I think the question or the debate is, are these the real world effects of cuts of staff at NOAA? Or is this just a natural disaster, a once in 100-year event that,
I mean,
is tragic,
it's
but
it's
not political?
it's kind of ridiculous in that the whole point of NOAA and the NWS is to alert people of a storm when it's coming.
Yeah.
And if you fire them willy-nilly and dismantle them or if you stop them from being able
Hamstring.
if you
Yeah.
hamstring them from being able to do their jobs, which is to alert people when a bad storm is coming, then yes, you are responsible for what happens when a storm comes. And it's not magic and voodoo. It's negligence and overreach that they targeted our top scientists in this country and we're going to suffer this same scenario after every storm, and it's like hurricane season right now. So I do put the blame squarely on the Trump administration and also on officials in Texas, like Senator
Yeah.
Ted Cruz, who helped every single legislative, move to stop funding, fire employees, and essentially put a stop to the forward-thinking scientists who keep us safe in this country. So yeah, and there's blood on their hands.
And there's something to be said too. What I was reading was that the communications breakdown in preparing and warning for the storm happened in what they call the last mile, so like at the federal level, it was still maybe operating as it should have been. But this last mile where it was going from state to local officials, that just shows, I mean, Trump's whole let's get rid of FEMA is so we can send emergency management back to the states. And this is like, hey, look at how this state handled it. They're not prepared.
Yeah, yeah, they got caught with their pants down. So the idea of ending FEMA and stopping these national science organizations that alert us to storms that are happening and when. It's scary. I remember I was in a tent with my wife in Watkins Glen, camping, and
Go on.
and it was a night just like this. No, and there was a hurricane or a tornado was blowing through, and a ranger was going tent to tent to alert all of the campers. Hey, you need to go to the shelter that's down the road because there's a storm coming. Like they know when something is coming. We have that science to detect the wind patterns of hurricanes and tornadoes, and we made it to the shelter and didn't die. This would have been at like midnight, So imagine a scenario where there's all these camps along the banks of the river, including Camp Mystic, which you mentioned, is where they had a tremendous loss.
Yes.
And at 3 a.m, when the alert system says the riverbank is about to be overrun or overcome with a wall of water, there is time and should be agency that comes in and gets this warning out to people to relocate and seek higher ground. So I think I heard there was like a 3-hour gap, Dave, described as the sort of handoff from federal to state, that no one did anything, and that that could have been the difference of living children, or some of the heroic stories that have been on the news since the storm of counselors and camp directors and Mexican volunteers. And you hear that? There was some Mexican fire workers and emergency rescue crews coming up across the border to help. Can you imagine?
Stephen Miller's got to tell ICE to, go find them on their water break. I know exactly where they are.
Just depressing, that story. Very depressing.
It is because, what I was reading about it, and Dave, thank you for corroborating my finding, which was that this wasn't at least a blatant failure as a direct result of understaffing at NOAA. But, I too am deeply troubled at the repudiation of science that this administration, brandishes so gleefully. They just shun science at every turn. And that's really, really troubling because, science and law, we kind of count on these two disciplines to keep everything going and keep everything, getting better.
And not only do they shun science, but they almost mock and openly, flagrantly disrespect expertise of any kind. You're just sort of brushed off as effete and educated, and don't patronize me.
Right.
I know
a liberal elite.
Right, exactly. And that there's like a conspiracy theory going around already that this company called Rainmaker had seeded the clouds 2 days before, and that's what caused the flood. And then these scientists had to come out and be like, no, that's impossible. The clouds that we seed already exist. We don't just create storms out of thin air. And the clouds for this showed up after the seeding this is a whole thing. And people are just like, ooh, I think that makes more sense if somebody seeded it than all these fancy science things you're talking about.
Yeah.
When they start hearing about warm fronts and wet fronts, they're like, oh, I don't understand that.
And not just like people, congresswomen.
Yes.
I'm with you a post from Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who
Okay,
said,
so I was going to ask. I saw this before I heard about the conspiracy theories. Is this a response to the conspiracy theory, or is it just because she's been going on about weather shit for a while?
I don't know if it's a response to the exact one. We'll have to look that up, but it certainly is treading the same pool of craziness.
And the timing is spot on, you know.
He's also like known for the sort of Jewish space lasers and weather controlled rhetoric. But here she says, I'm introducing a bill that prohibits the injection, release, or dispersion of chemicals or substances into the atmosphere for the express purpose of altering weather, temperature, climate, or sunlight intensity. It will be a felony offense. I've been researching weather modifications and working with the Legislative Council for months writing this bill. It will be similar to Florida's Senate Bill 56. We must end the dangerous and deadly practice of weather modification and geoengineering.
And go back to the dangerous and deadly practice of emitting massive amounts of carbon dioxide without holding anybody accountable and externalizing all the expenses that come with that.
Yeah.
But what's really crazy is that woman who we just read, who maybe wrote the goofiest suggestion after the storm, is a congresswoman. A, B, sits as the chair of several committees, and C, has been put to maybe the highest post of popularity and wisdom seeking by Donald J. Trump in his presidency. It really is an example of what a ship of fools we've become under the Trump administration.
Well, I don't think too many people are under the illusion that Marjorie Taylor Greene represents any great, wellspring of intellectual offerings. But she does demonstrate the one requirement, brand loyalty. She's fiercely loyal to Donald Trump, and so she is rewarded.
Although today there was a few cracks in the wall today. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I saw her speaking the anti-bombing of Iran.
That was the first few cracks. There was even a different story today. You're right, Dave. She was siding with those opposed to the bombing of Iran, the Tucker Carlson crew. But today she was siding with the anger of MAGA about the Jeffrey Epstein list, which is probably a story you're going to get to, and I hate saying that, so I apologize.
No. Let's jump right into that.
Because Marjorie's the transition, I guess. But
we're already there.
Wait, you know what? Real quick, before you get into Epstein, I want to read this one quote from Donald Trump about the floods.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So it's actually a quote from Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, who said about his conversation with Trump. He said he could not stop talking about how sad he was for all the little girls who have lost their lives. Now we may move on to Epstein. Thank you.
Oh, great. Well, actually, wait.
Just the little girls. That fat counselor, he can fuck himself.
You are watching Generation Exile.
Really hate that sad loser, Mr. Neuberger.
Who, me?